What's up, guys? I'm Chelsea Kolman with Dauntless Performance Horses, and I'm here today with Cato, and we are introducing you to a new series that we started called Class with Cato. So in this series, what we are documenting and what you'll see is this is a wild Mustang that has come out of the wild. He's been in captivity for almost 2 years, and you are going to see the entire process of our training with him. So from day one to working him in the round pen and getting him used to us and catching him and teaching him to join up and teaching him to be comfortable and to trust us, and then all the way to him being saddled and ridden and broken and going out and on field trips. And you really get to see the evolution of where he starts and where he finishes. And we're going to document the entire thing, which means you get to see the good, the bad, and the ugly, because we keep everything very real here. We're not going to sugarcoat. We're not going to edit the embarrassing or tricky or, issues that we have. We're going to show you guys everything. I'm super excited for you guys to get to join us with that. It's going to be packed full of a lot of knowledge, not only that you can use if you have a Mustang, but in any horse that you have. At Dauntless Performance Horses, we specialize in behavioral issues and young horses. So I've seen a wide range of horses that have come to me just to be sold, to horses that have come to me because they're about to be euthanized because they're dangerous. And I'm going to leave you guys with a lot of knowledge that you can, like I said, unpack, take with you and utilize in your daily life with your horses or your students and your barn. So I hope that you guys get a lot of good information out of this. And just to tell you a little bit about Cato here, he is a coming 7-year-old Mustang out of the Stinking Water HMA region, which is in Oregon. That area doesn't have a ton of Mustangs, but it has been said that a lot of the horses that come from that region are very drafty. The story behind that, it states that the settlers back in the day, they let a bunch of their horses loose, and in that time frame, they had a bunch of Percherons to plow their fields and do, the gritty, hard farm work. So essentially, the Percherons got loose or set loose, whatever actually happened, who knows, and bred with the wild horses. Now, as a lot of people know, the Mustang is not actually a breed. It's compiled of a bunch of different breeds. So they're the wild horse. So in some regions, you'll see prominent draftiness. Other regions, you'll see a little bit thinner, more refined, shorter. He's a decent size for a Mustang across the board, but he's pretty average size for horses from his region. So he is, like I said, he's coming 7. He's about 15'2". He is a bay roan. So essentially what that means is he's bay. He's just got silver dusting over top of his coat and his color. Now what you'll notice with him is he's got a lot of marks on his side. And at first glance, they just look like spots, but they're actually scars. So his name in the roundup pen, or as the military would call it, his call sign, was War Dog. All of these markings you see on his side are actually scars. 90% of them are. So this gives you a good idea of when we think, oh, this horse had to survive, we think, oh, maybe he had an owner that didn't feed him. This is a whole different level of survival. This horse has literally fought his way to his position. Now, he came from a band of what they call bastard stallions, which is essentially, if you can imagine all the frat boys that got kicked out of their frat houses, if they just joined in one group, that's what a band of bastard stallions is typically. So in a normal band of wild horses, you'll have a lead stallion and a lead mare, and then they'll all fall in line after that. In the band of bastard stallions, you don't really see that. There's not really much of an order. They kind of flip-flop. There's a lot of reindeer games, as we'll call it, or beer pong if you want to go off the frat boy concept. So that can go a couple different ways. That can go, they're super defensive or they're super chilled and relaxed. Now, this horse in particular, and what we've read about a lot of horses from that region, are very intelligent, very smart, and slow to trust, but they've got their heads on straight. So we've definitely noticed that, having dealt with him. Now, It's very, very, very tricky when you're dealing with horses like this because he is very stoic and he internalizes a lot. He does not want to be aggressive, he does not want to be mean, and he does not want to be in your face. He's a sit back and observe type of guy, which is going to be interesting moving forward to see how he reacts to certain things. Because when we got him, he came from another trainer. He had a little bit of training, but it was, I won't say it went south, but it didn't go how they wanted it to go. So they ended up selling him, and that's how we ended up with him. So he's had a little bit of work done. Some of the things we're having to touch on, and other things we're having to undo and redo, just different forms of teaching method, which is hard on a horse that doesn't know education, right? His form of education is, this is what I do to stay alive and this is what I do to maintain, right? So there's not a lot of expansion on a wild horse's education. So this is really the first time we're gonna get to see what happens with a horse like this. And when I say horse like this, I mean a horse that's very internal, very thoughtful. He thinks about everything that he does. So that'll be really cool for you guys to see. I'm used to dealing with horses like this because a lot of horses that I end up getting with behavioral issues, they get to that kind of shut down spot. Now, this horse would be shut down for a different reason than those horses. So it'll be really cool, not only for you guys, but for me to see moving forward how my training techniques with other horses that I've had with similar defense mechanisms will work with a horse like this, who has a similar defense mechanism, but for a different reason. Now, what you guys are about to see in this first episode is we're actually gonna put him in a round pen, a privacy round pen, and we're gonna let him loose for the first time. Now, in this series, there's a lot of twists and turns and a lot of, it's not a straight path, right? The path of least resistance is a straight line. That's not how this works. So there's a lot of twists and turns, a lot of surprises, and I'm really excited for you guys to get to see how all of this unfolds and where it ends up. And I think you guys will really enjoy watching this horse's gears turn and figuring out how his brain works. So here you go. I hope you guys enjoy. Let us know what you think.
Our champion now, Chelsea Kolman, Dauntless Courage.
I am Chelsea Kolman of Dauntless Performance Horses, and I'm here today with Cato. He is a 7-year-old Mustang, and today we're going to work on free lunging. So basically what that means is I'm going to set him loose and I'm going to do some work off the rope. We've done some work with him on the rope, but we've got this nice privacy round pin here, so I'm going to take him off the rope and set him loose and see what we've got. So the main things I'm going to be looking for here are his gait, his natural gait pattern, meaning is there any sort of weakness in his body? On the line, you can see that on the lunge line, but at the end of the day, good boy. At the end of the day, you still have, anytime you have tension or the ability to create tension, they can compensate and cover things up. So here, as you can also tell, I'm not using a rope. We've had some issues in the past trying to catch him in small spaces. Good boy. And now I'm just going to allow him to do what he knows is right, which is come to me and present and basically ask what do you want? We've had some issues in the past here recently with him trying to catch him out in the field. We think potentially when he was in the roundup situation, he was probably lassoed a couple times. So when you walk out in the field to catch him with the halter and lead rope, sometimes he misinterprets that and gets nervous and runs off. So I'm just sending him out without ropes in my hands. I also want him to know the beauty of this round pin is I can set him loose and he can learn that he's got the ability to move freely and be on his own, but he doesn't have to worry about where is he gonna go? It's contained, it's big enough for him to be able to move out from underneath himself, but it's contained enough that he's not gonna get away from me. But in a horse like this, he's, like I said, a wild Mustang. He's been in captivity for a little over a year. This is a huge thing for him. He went from being completely wild and free, roaming, for many years of his life, was only in captivity for a short period of time. So he is what I would consider very raw and as instinctually untouched as you can get, other than just going out into the wild and catching one off the bat. Now here, so what I did there is just like you would lunge any horse, I just took the pressure off, and the reaction he gave me was what I want. I'm gonna let him sit for a second and look around. What I'm looking for is a little bit of lick and chew, but also to see if he gets curious enough to come up to me and ask, hey, what are we doing now? Typically, in situations like this with a domestic horse, they do similar what he just did. They get bored very quickly and they go to find something else to fill their time. With him, this is all very, very new to him, so I'm just trying to get a feel for him loose in here today to get to know his personality a little bit more and see naturally, without any ties, quite literally, who he is, what he's about, and where he leans to. We've got some that you set them loose and the second you let them go, they're like, get away from me, I want to do my own thing. And then you've got others like him who want to be involved and want to be engaged. I'm not gonna let him stand here and eat just because that's not what we're doing here. I'm just trying to see what boundaries I can push, what boundaries he's put in place, and where I can go from there. So this is a good example here. On a normal domesticated horse, you'd see a resting leg and you'd think, perfect, he's relaxed. Now in this instance, he is relaxed and he's, you know, resting a leg, licking and chewing, whatnot. But with this horse in particular, we'll see him rest legs a lot, but he does it when he's anxious. When he's anxious and he rests a leg, what he's doing is he's recharging. So it's essentially when you know you're about to clip your fifth horse for the day and you turn it off and let it rest so it's strong enough to use, that's essentially what he's doing with the hind leg. Not in this moment, but in times we've seen this with him before. When he gets stressed, he'll rest the leg. And what we found is it's very similar to the situation I just described. When he's tense and he rests the leg, he's almost, in a sense, recharging, and then he'll strike out or get upset. So that's definitely an opposite scenario of what we see in our domesticated horses. Typically when they rest the leg or they lick and chew, that's a sign of relaxation. But with him in particular, from what we've noticed in the past, when he gets stressed and he rests the leg, it's an act of a recharge so that he can access that leg if he needs it. And eventually we'll get him to the point where we can send him out and he'll know the program enough to carry on and not stop. So now I'm just attempting what they call, in the natural horsemanship world, they call the draw. So what that looks like is I'll send him out. Again, I'm not using ropes because we've had a misinterpretation of ropes and halters, so we're trying to undo that. Now there, he's attempting the draw on his own, which I respect that, but also with these horses coming from the wild, it's very important that they understand not only how to set boundaries for themselves, but to respect human boundaries. And that starts with, you don't stop until I tell you to stop. I respect the fact that he's looking to me for an answer, but it's also a fine line of, I ignore that today and tomorrow and the next day, and then next week when he goes to say, no, I think I'm done, and I resist that, he then goes, well, that's been okay for the past week, so why is it not okay now? So I'm gonna wait, take the pressure off. And what I'm looking for him, or from him, from him, is to see if I can't get him to take a step towards me. Good boy. Now this is something that you can't expect out of them quickly, but it's something that we will continuously ask of him until he gets it, and he will get it eventually. It's a fine line with these horses because they come from the wild where they're free and they've got full access to whatever they want when they want it, to being put in a catch pen where they can't physically get away from anything. So it's important to allow him to come to me on his own for me to know that that's where his brain is at. I could walk up to him right now and he'll stand there, and eventually that's what'll happen if he doesn't come up to me. But it's very important for him to know that he has the ability to do what he wants, and I'm respecting a boundary by allowing him to stop and think and chill out without overwhelming him by approaching him on my own. But also, it's important for him to know that I respect his boundary. And it's good for me to know too, when he gets to the point of, you know, he goes out of his way to come up to me, it's important for me to know when that shift happens, and moving forward, there's a lot of things we won't do until we see that shift. So a precursor to that shift is, if you notice, when I move, he pays attention to where my body is. What I'm looking for here is for him to turn. Ideally, he would turn and face me regardless and follow my move. But again, that's not a big deal. Today, in this loose round pen, what we're trying to do is just get a feel for who he is, what he brings to the table, and what he's comfortable with. He says, no, I will trot. Again, if I had a rope or a whip, this would not be as difficult to get him to canter, but that's not the point. The point is I'm applying a lot of pressure. I'm overwhelming him a little bit in a safe way. It's the concept of doing dangerous things carefully, right? So I know he's not comfortable with me running behind him, smacking myself, but I also want him to know that I don't pose a threat. This is just pressure to get forward movement out of him. And then I'm gonna back off. And I'm gonna take a breath, and you'll notice he's catching himself now, but you'll notice every time this horse goes and we send him out and stop, he immediately rests the leg. That's going away. But again, we've noticed with him, he utilizes that as a recharge, which could potentially be dangerous in the future. The licking and chewing is a safe move by him. The resting of the leg, a lot of people will disagree, but like I said, what we've noticed with him is he uses the leg rest as a recharge. So it's almost, and there he goes. That's fine. That will eventually transition into he's comfortable, so he's resting a leg. But particularly with his hind feet, he's a bit uncomfortable with being trimmed and getting his legs messed with. So we just keep an eye on that, and we pick up on those things. Now, one of the most difficult things about the horses from the wild is that they don't all act the same, but for the most part, they don't act at all like domesticated horses. So what would be normal across the board as far as body language goes for a domesticated horse, essentially means nothing to a wild horse. In this horse's case, definitely. He's not one to show a lot of physical discomfort. He's not one to show a lot of emotional discomfort. So those are things that you have to hold yourself accountable for when you're with him, and pick up on little things. Like you can see here, he's got a really, really inverted neck. So the muscles underneath his neck are stronger than the muscles on the top, and he's got a very high head carriage. That's a uncomfortable posture. It's a defensive posture. So I know based off of the way he's built and the way this muscle has developed that when his head comes up, any horse typically when their head comes up, they're evading or they're uncomfortable, but that is definitely one of his tells. He has a little scratchy spot, but he pretends that it doesn't feel good sometimes. So now I'm just coming over here and loving on him. And then I'm gonna just step away. And you can see him, his nostrils flare and he snorts. So he is very, very, very aware, which is nice. But he's aware in a way that he doesn't always physically react. He'll notice something and then he'll sit and he'll ponder, which I love. So I'm just gonna take some time here to back away from him and let him think. And I don't expect him to come to me on his own today. I don't expect him to do that for the next month, right? It's definitely something that we'd love to see right away, but it's also almost one of the last things that you're gonna see out of him. He's comfortable with me and he knows that I'm aware of that. So a little bit of this behavior will be one, he doesn't completely trust people yet, but two, he knows that he doesn't have to go that extra mile to come to me because I'll come to him, which is completely fine. That's part of the deal of compromising. So now what I'm gonna do is just try and walk around him. He does not like it when people are behind him, as you can see there. So that's just a safe way of me to, in a good distance, walk behind him, see how he reacts. I'm just gonna be a little bit busy around him. He's very, very observant. When we bring him in at night, he's out during the day, in at night. He'll sit and he'll watch us do all the barn chores and he won't touch his hay until we leave. He's definitely very curious and he wants to be a part of the conversation. And you'll see a big change there. So this horse is very smart about his body because he's very aware of his body. So you'll see he's very comfortable when you approach him head on, which is also a huge difference between domesticated horses and wild horses. So a lot of domesticated horses, if you walk straight up to them head on, they'll spin and run because that's a defensive posture. With this horse in particular, he wants to be approached head on, does not want to be approached from the side. So that's a little bit of a change. But you'll notice anytime I'm not right in front of him, he's very aware of where my body is. He's always got an eye on me or an ear on me. We've got horses galloping around in the background, which is another great opportunity for him, right? We put him in a situation where we allow him the opportunity to get overwhelmed and see how he handles it. And this is him to a T. This is his personality. He's very, very observant and he's pretty chill. Now, he was a part of a band of what they call a band of bastard stallions. So there was anywhere between 5 and 13. I don't know his particular band, how many there were, but a band will consist of, good boy, 5 to 15. And it's only stallions. So essentially, the bastard stallions, as they call them, are the rejects from the herd. So it's essentially a group of frat boys that got kicked out of the frat house. And if you look into that, you'll see a lot of people will comment on ones that they have from similar situations are very similar to his personality. They're very sure of themselves and they're very confident in themselves. But if you think about it, as far as sensitivity goes, if you grew up in a room full or a house full of 13 frat boys, you'd be desensitized and immune to a lot of things. So what I'm doing now, again, is I'm just giving him, he's not going to do a true join up with me yet. So when I'm lunging him around and I stop, I obviously at the end of his time with me, I will have him, he will walk to me. But here, this is one step in the right direction. It's his attempt to a join up. He wants to be with me. Part of that is because he doesn't completely trust me. He knows that kind of keep your friends close, keep your enemies closer. That's the wild mentality from him. Very normal. But also, he knows, one, that I feed him, and two, that I keep him safe. So, and I'm in charge, right? That's the other kind of perk of the band of bastard stallions is there's not typically, it's not run by one horse, whereas a normal band of wild horses, there's a lead stallion, a lead mare, and everybody else falls in line accordingly. That's not the case in the group of wild stallions. So he's definitely going to be one that looks for, once he understands that there's order in the world, he's going to, hopefully, what we've seen so far, he enjoys that. He doesn't want to have to think on his own. And when he realizes that he can kind of just wake up and show up and the rest of his day is planned for him, I think that'll suit him well. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed the first episode of Class with Cato. There's a couple things I want you to remember. As I talked about a little bit in this episode, and you'll hear me talk more in future episodes, each horse learns at a different rate. So with that being said, some people are good at math, some people are good at history, some people are good at English. Horses are the same way. Now you've got to understand, in his particular situation, he came from the wild, right? So everything is self-taught through learned behavior from other horses and the environment and so on and so forth. We, as people who ride horses and own horses and train horses, when we domesticate the wild horse, we're not only asking them to come to terms with us and our form of communication and the way we do things as a predator, but we're asking them to engage with us and other horses in a way that they don't necessarily engage. So for instance, putting two horses in a trailer with each other. That is not something a wild horse would ever do on its own, right? They wouldn't stand in necessarily close proximities like that with just any horse that they've never met before, and they wouldn't stand in a metal box that takes them from one place to another. So it is very important to keep in mind that not only do they learn at different rates, each thing you teach them, they will learn each thing at a different rate. So with this horse in particular, he's funny about his legs. Now, we don't know why that is. Is it because he has gotten caught in something? Is it because he's been sore before? Is it because there's an injury we don't know about? Is it because he tripped and he fell and he lost his footing when he got captured? Who knows, right? We don't have that information and we won't have that information. But what we know is that the legs are a tricky spot for him. Some things we teach him, he absorbs like that, but that doesn't mean everything we teach him is gonna be absorbed that way. So it's important to remember that, and it's important to know that just because you can go out and he runs up to you in the field doesn't mean you're necessarily going to be able to put a saddle on him and break him in 2 days, right? So that's important to keep in mind. It's also important to keep in mind that when you have a bad day or when your emotions fluctuate, that is not something that they are used to dealing with as wild horses. Our domestic horses, my 4-star horse, for example, he can smell when I'm having a bad day and he acts and reacts accordingly. So with him, if he's having a rough day and I'm having a rough day, we know from the get-go. This horse, I approach, I work with him, I mess with him, and as time goes on, he starts to notice, okay, something's off with her. She's not doing this way or this that way, or I feel this from her. That's going to mean something to him, but he's not going to know what that means. His brain goes friend or foe. That's where his brain's at right now. Is it safe or is it not? Asset, liability. That's what his assessments are at this point. And we have to draw a line in between, right? I need him to respect me. I need him to listen to me, but I also need him to trust me. So those are things that you have to keep in mind, and it's very easy to get discouraged, but I will challenge you to neutralize yourself every time you go into the pen with these horses. Understand that if you're having a bad day and you're like, I gotta work the Mustang today, or I gotta get on my horse, and your day is just shot because you're upset or you're miserable or you're sad, don't do it, because they have to process that. And when you bring baggage that you're carrying to the table, they have to carry their baggage plus your baggage. And sometimes it's too much. So keep that in mind moving forward with your horses. And as you watch this series, you're gonna see a lot of things unfold. And I'm excited for you guys to be able to join in on that journey, because there are things that will surprise me, I'm sure, and I know there's things that are going to surprise you. So this is going to be a super fun journey that we all get to go on together. And I'm grateful to have you guys along for the ride. And of course, none of this would be possible without all of our amazing sponsors. There's going to be a slide up on the screen that lists all of our sponsors and also lists a bunch of discount codes. So stick to the end. We'll have this at the end of every video, so you guys always have an opportunity to get a look at who supports us and who keeps us going, because at the end of the day, without our sponsors, none of this would be possible. So to all of our sponsors, horse, dog, and human sponsors, thank you so much for everything you do for us. We really appreciate it. And if any of you guys have questions about any of the products that you see on that list or any of the companies, please do not hesitate to DM me, email me, contact me any way possible. And yeah, we will get you what you need, and I will tell you anything you want to know about the product. So before we end things out here, I want to thank you guys for watching. Thank you for joining us on this journey. I always want you to remember that it doesn't matter where you're coming from, it only matters where you're going. So keep that in mind in everything that you do. And I hope that you have enjoyed this thus far, and I hope that you continue to enjoy Class with Cato.